let's dive into a little bit of what's happening in the crypto markets today. Obviously, SBF in the news. We'll talk about how maybe that will affect or could affect some things within the crypto market itself. It's going to be a good one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, thanking our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. Get into your own self-directed crypto IRA. This is one of the places you can do it. And they've got a lot happening over there. You can get into everything from Bitcoin to Ethereum, along with a ton of altcoins, or you can go into gold and silver. Now 200,000 accounts, 7 billion in transactions. This is a great place to start. If you guys want to use our link down below, you get a $100 funding reward. Just use that and you can kind of get started over there. Let's lead off here. I want to kind of jump to a story here. On the jobs report, which just came out, soft jobs report fails to dampen the Bitcoin enthusiasm. And of course, Bitcoin's still holding its own. Many people looked at this and said, well, maybe there's going to be some market adjustments down. And really, if you look at some of the details within this, Bitcoin obviously a little bit flat right now, but the key here is 150,000 non-farm jobs in October, less than the fact set that everybody was forecasting, which was 180. So unemployment rose to 3.9, which is up slightly. Now, remember, Chair Powell has been holding rates as they are for the Fed fund rate. A lot of this has been because of this kind of precarious situation around data that's been coming in. And I think to a certain extent, Powell, and I talked about this earlier in the week, a little confused on why are we not seeing a reaction from the market? Well, maybe this is the beginning. So obviously higher employment, lower jobs definitely could show cooling. All right, some other things in the article here. Powell said that while the move may slow hiring and economic growth, the central bank needs to remain focused on keeping inflation in check. Sounds to me like he's looking for a much deeper cut in terms of jobs. Open interest for Bitcoin call options, 40, 45, and 50K are now growing. So a lot of people looking at this as potentially a push up. We'll see. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys think Bitcoin is going to start to move on an uptrend here. Even though sentiment has kind of been flat and sideways, much like Bitcoin itself, with these kinds of numbers and continuation of seeing the market kind of react to this, we may see some movement here within the crypto markets. Another thing here, COBEC letter, highest unemployment rate since February 2022. Let me zoom in on that for you guys. Unemployment still stands at historically low levels. That's the thing I think everybody needs to remember. Sure, it's up, but it is not near what we've dealt with in the past in terms of real unemployment. And when you think about that and you look at trying to get to a true 2% inflation, which is what Powell's target is, I just don't know that this is the number that's going to move the Fed, which gets back to my point. I feel like the Fed is at some point going to give us another hike. Fed also said higher unemployment is needed to lower inflation. He's looking for a bigger number. I don't think this is a big deal for the Fed. They'll see that maybe it at least is going in the right direction, but the spread here is just too great overall, even with the GDP. And a lot of the GDP has been through government spending, not necessarily through activity in the market. That's, I think, a very delayed response out there that a lot of people aren't recognizing. Other things that are happening is around the consumer sentiment index. And if you look at some of the things right here, I want to showcase the index of consumer sentiment. This was a pretty big drop between September 23 and October from a 67 to a 63, almost 4 points. And I think the scenario with this is starting to showcase the issues that I talk about a lot, and that is consumer credit, slowing spending, which has those trickle-down effects on the economy and eventually to the businesses that hire people. The question is, how long does that take? Does the Fed continue to let this run out, or are they anticipating a potential shift here? Love to get your feedback, what you guys think. On to other news, of course, finally, Sam Bankman-Fried has been found guilty. Let's just clip to that and let this kind of tell the story here.
Ian Williams, and I'm the United States Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. Sam Bankman-Fried perpetrated one of the biggest financial frauds in American history, a multi-billion-dollar scheme designed to make him the king of crypto. But here's the thing. The cryptocurrency industry might be new. The players like Sam Bankman-Fried might be new. But this kind of fraud, this kind of corruption is as old as time, and we have no patience for it.
So I think the point here is obviously, I think everybody knew this was going to happen. The real question is, how does this impact the rest of the market? And if you look at a few things within this, right now, this guy could face up about 115 years in prison. Sentencing date is set for March. Remember that most likely, that's his max. So most likely, I don't know that this guy gets that. I mean, I don't know. He might get a Madoff style numbers, but I'm not sure. I feel like they're going to be a little bit softer on him for some reason. But another thing that you have to remember is the connection of FTX to our politicians, which also puts a lot of pressure, I think, on why we're not seeing the Biden administration, among many others out there within our politicians, not necessarily playing favorites to what's happening in crypto, mainly because of, obviously, for good reason, Sam Bankman-Fried is one of the people's most responsible for Biden being in office, and also the biggest donors to the Dems, and also the Republicans. So this cuts both sides of the aisles. So I think this is kind of one of those sore spots in DC right now. Maybe this dissipates and we start to see real litigation, or I should say real regulation starting to take place with this off the, at least off the docket right now going forward. But remember, it's still going to linger around all the way into March. So just kind of curious what you guys think about that. Let's go over to a couple other things here. This, of course, is TED Talks Macro. Heads up for the Solana bulls. Current epoch ends in 9 hours from now, meaning those who want to unstake and take advantage of the recent rip higher will be able to sell their tokens. So again, Solana, we've been talking about this all week. We'll probably have another video dropping here on the last day of Breakpoint. So many big things happening with Solana and the ecosystem for sure. We'll dive into all that. So make sure and stick around for those videos. But I think the key here is kind of interesting is that remember that it was about this time last year when Breakpoint was ending, and then of course the FTX scenario came up right behind it. And I think it's interesting and somewhat poetic that we see Sam Bankman get a guilty, prediction here in terms of just the impact on Solana. So I don't know. Finally, Solana, I think, has broken out of that. That's the good thing here. Love to know if you guys are staking or if you're looking at possibly selling. Will Clemente came in and said, hey, it feels like SBF being found guilty is fairly symbolic point to my point as a page turning in the industry, bright future ahead. And I think that is the case. I think maybe all the bad guys, there's always going to be bad guys, but the really crazy, corrupt actions, I think, in the future are going to be tempered by what happened here with Sam Bankman-Fried. And that can only mean good things for crypto, alternative assets. We're going to start to get, the traditional bandits in the space, and that is, traditional finance coming in. One other thing I want to kind of hit on here, and that is, could Bitcoin reach 47K by the end of November? This is Sin Futures co-founder talking about this. A couple points he really kind of cements in on. Last week, he cemented October's reputation as Uptober. We know that. November tends to be even better than October with an average return of about 35% of Bitcoin. If this November were to deliver similar returns, we could see Bitcoin around 47. Now, sentiment has been on and has been holding on the upside, meaning the trend is not dissipated. We haven't seen a departure in the two sentiment tracks that we look at, obviously with the market sentiment index. They've been holding somewhat steady. Now that in most cases looks at it from a sideways, much like the trading zones that we've been looking at when you think about TA. We'll have some of the TA analysis on that as well. But I'd love to get your feedback. Do you feel pretty solid on Bitcoin continuing its trend up? Clear indicator of heightened institutional interest as big players are seemingly consolidating their positions in digital assets, specifically Bitcoin, and nearly 325 million flowing into the sector, almost 300 million of which went into Bitcoin. So good for Bitcoin. But I think, remember, there's a lot of new projects out there. And I think we're going to see a lot of new innovation around blockchain, which is going to start to give us maybe an altcoin season, this time around that may be dwarfing that of what we saw in the last bull run. So love to know what your tokens are out there in the market. Do you guys have some specific ones that you're watching? Here was Dylan Leclerc kind of hitting on this. Hilarious thing is that 88.5% of the Bitcoin supply hasn't moved in the last 3 months. Wall Street is going to have to really pump this thing to get holders to part with their Bitcoins. Yeah, maybe. I think 47 would do it for sure. It's definitely going to be a push in. Question is do we get a slow trend down all the way up to the ETF, which is most likely at this point because we haven't seen any rumblings. We're going to try to have the Bloomberg guys on next week to talk about the ETF probability still, because remember, here we are in November. We're going to see two big holidays, not necessarily major movement. This could be a surprise if we get an ETF this year, but I think it all boils up, it looks like now in January. Coinbase was another one. I want to kind of jump in on this because to me, this is really a good sign. I'm going to go to the bigger picture here. This was their report on their earnings. And if you look at it, 83% of G20 nations now adopting crypto. The big one right there is that one at the top, 31% of Gen Z and millennials owning crypto. 12% of Gen X and even baby boomers also own crypto. 52 million Americans, which is the big one. 674 million in total revenue for them overall. So for a bear market, the fact that the biggest exchange here in the US continues to move, and I think that when you look at the opportunities here and what this is going to look like in terms of revenue, and I'll jump into some charts here. This is huge for Coinbase. It's why Coinbase is betting the farm and going head to head with the SEC. This was kind of a breakdown by Velvet Capital. Coinbase's Q3 State of Crypto report showed younger generations, yes. Most respondents had negative views of the system, meaning the traditional finance system, expensive, outdated, exclusionary, confusing, and slow. Totally agree with all those. Gen Z, pretty much the big one, said that political promises about crypto were important in the election factor. So if we do see guys like Vivek or others, I mean, if you look at Trump, he's not a big pro-crypto guy. So if you're thinking Republican, you're probably going to have to go an alternate route, including maybe DeSantis, which has been slowly starting to put out a position on crypto, or Vivek. What are you going? And I'd love to get your feedback on which route you're taking, because there's not really a position on the Dem side. We do see a lot of movement, at least in the independent and also obviously on the GOP side. A couple other things within this that were interesting. I thought, will you be voting based on crypto policy in 2024? And you can kind of see pretty big deal here in terms of the impact that this might mean. So kudos to Coinbase, definitely, for sure. Matt Hogan kind of hit on something else. Another important stat in the Coinbase Q3 earnings is this: transaction revenues, 289 million, and subscription and service revenues, 334 million. So you can see USD staking and Base alone were a big part of this business, and they're just getting going on this. That's why we are going to see the Coinbase scenario fight to the death, I think, against the SEC to get this approved and be able to move forward with their business model. Other things happening out there, of course, what happens to Bitcoin's price if a spot ETF isn't approved? Now, this is the thing that many people are looking at. Does Gensler still have enough political, gravitas to be able to hold out on this round of very aggressive Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin applications, or does he have the huevos to try to go ahead and say denied? I don't know. This is going to be interesting. But if we do see something that does not happen here in terms of an ETF getting approved, this analyst anticipates there will be a significant letdown for the market. The spot Bitcoin ETF is often viewed as a hallmark of institutional acceptance. I agree with that. I think this would completely change the future of how Bitcoin is looked at in this cycle. I think this would spoil the institutional adoption, potential pickup, even if we did see some sort of application. Now, if it's just delayed because of some, technical aspects around the situation of the applications, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if we truly get a full denial. That, I think, is a problem. He says he believes that the absence of ETF would impose substantial drag on the crypto market, and it would necessitate a period of adjustment and realignment. Totally agree with that. I do agree that would be the case. All right, listen, if you guys are not in our Diamond Circle, make sure and visit it. It's right over there on Substack. That's where it lives today. So if you go to pbn3.substack, this is where you can join. And it's the place to get additional content. We do our additional podcast over there. I also do another segment series over there where I break down charts and also go into a little bit more research that we don't cover here on the YouTube channel. So make sure and check that out. If you guys want to catch me on X, it's out there at Paul Barron, or we'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.